Good day, everyone. Today, we will be talking about one of the most commonly requested diagnostic tests in the whole world, X-rays. X-rays are the most utilized imaging modality globally. Our focus today will not be the nitty-gritty, but rather the must-knows in the use and basic interpretation of X-rays. Regardless of what specialty or field you will eventually go into, these are the following which we all must keep in mind when it comes to X-rays. Before we jump right into the clinical aspect of X-rays, a brief definition of terms. And the first thing we need to define is radiation. Radiation, simply, is the emission or transmission of energy in the form of waves or particles through space or a medium. And one of the most important types of radiation is electromagnetic radiation. These are waves of energy which belong to the electromagnetic spectrum. Broadly, there are seven main types of electromagnetic radiation arranged in order of increasing energy. In a gist, frequency is the number of waves passing through a specific point per second. The unit for frequency is hertz. Wavelength, on the other hand, is the distance between consecutive corresponding points on the same phase on the wave. The higher the frequency of a particular electromagnetic radiation, the lower will be the wavelength, and vice versa. The higher the frequency, therefore, the higher the energy of the radiation in question. Conversely, the higher the wavelength, the lower the energy. Which is why we can see in this diagram that gamma rays over here and X-rays in the left-handmost side belong to the higher end of the electromagnetic spectrum. Radio waves, on the other hand, because they have lower frequency but higher wavelength, belong to the lower energy part of the spectrum. How are diagnostic X-rays produced? The principle behind the production of diagnostic X-rays is actually very simple. This diagram represents an X-ray tube and it has two opposite ends. The cathode on the right side here and the anode on the left. The cathode in the right is negatively charged because this is where the electrons are produced. The electrons are motivated and attracted to go towards the left side, which is the anode because the anode is positively charged. And we recall in physics that opposites attract. When the negatively charged electrons hit the positively charged anode, X-rays are produced. According to the World Health Organization, around 3.6 billion diagnostic imaging exams are performed each year globally. And of these, 80 to 90% are X-rays. And quite unsurprisingly, after all, compared to other tests, diagnostic X-rays are cost-effective. Acquisition of X-rays are faster compared to other tests. Many healthcare facilities, such as small clinics, have an X-ray machine, and X-rays can detect potentially life-threatening pathologies, such as pneumothorax and pulmonary embolism. In addition, X-rays can also assist in the conduct of surgical and interventional procedures such as biopsies. The obvious disadvantage of X-rays is, of course, the exposure to ionizing radiation. Ionizing radiation, simply put, is a kind of radiation which can cause some degree of DNA damage. The amount of radiation exposure in our average chest x-ray, fortunately, is very, very small. Our unit for radiation exposure is called the sieverts or SV, and one adult chest x-ray is equivalent to just around zero point 0.1 millisieverts. The limit for the general public is 1 millisievert per year. As a matter of precaution, nonetheless, X-rays are contraindicated for all pregnant patients and, unless extremely necessary as when ruling out a fracture, also best avoided in children because the small amount of ionizing radiation may interfere with the normal growth of the bones. In the United States alone, around 70 million chest X-rays are performed per year. Chest X-rays are the most requested imaging modality, which is why we will spend a considerable time discussing its basics. This is not even an exhaustive list, but I want to emphasize here that there are so many possible indications for requesting a chest X-ray, which is no wonder why it is the most requested imaging modality worldwide. It is not enough, of course, to request for just an X-ray. Like in photography, we need to specify what angles, what views, or what projections, in medical terms, we want to look at. And for chest x-rays, there are three must-know projections. The three most important projections for chest x-rays are the posterior-anterior or PA view, the antero-posterior or AP view, and the lateral view. First, the PA view. The PA view is the standard frontal chest projection, and it is arguably the most informative projection. The X-ray beam travels through the patient from posterior to anterior, meaning from the back to the front. It is performed with the patient standing and in full inspiration. The PA view is the best projection to examine the lungs, as we can see here, the bones of the thoracic cavity, the mediastinum or the chest wall, and the great vessels, which are the aorta and the vena cava. The obvious requirement and potential disadvantage, however, is that in a PA view, the patient needs to be able to stand erect, which may not always be possible for the very sick and bedbound patient. Hence, an alternative is the AP view or anteroposterior view, in which the radiation beam traverses the patient from anterior to posterior, or from front to back. The AP view provides considerable flexibility. It can be performed with the patient sitting up or even lying down by means of a mobile X-ray unit. The clear advantage of the AP view compared to the PA view is that it is more convenient to perform for intubated patients, trauma patients, or patients who are unconscious. The disadvantages of an AP view, however, is that the mediastinal structures may appear magnified because the heart is further away from the X-ray detector. Also, as we can compare here, the patient is often poorly inspired compared to the requirements of a PA view, and the scapula or the shoulder blades may cover some of the lungs. Finally, the lateral view is essentially a supplementary view which can help detect pathologies which may be otherwise missed in a PA or an AP view. For example, if there is a mass in the retrocardiac space or the space behind the heart. There really is no right or wrong way to interpret a chest x-ray, and our goal for this quick session is not to turn ourselves into radiologists, but that regardless of specialty, especially in the primary care setting, that we do not miss any important detail in a chest x-ray, which may potentially be life-saving. There are many systematic approaches to reading a chest x-ray, but personally, the one I find easiest to use is Doctors A, B, C, D, E. Doctors A, B, C, D, E. D for details, R for ripe, which is another acronym pertaining to image quality, more on that later. S for soft tissue and bones, A for airway and the mediastinum, B for breathing, C for circulation, D for diaphragm, and E for extras or the miscellaneous details. First, D. Before even beginning to look at a chest x-ray, the first thing that we must ascertain is that the details of the study are correct. The patient's name, age, date of birth, and sex must be verified. The view or projection is ascertained, and the date and time of the study are verified. Next, RIPE, which is another acronym for image quality. R refers to rotation, meaning is the chest x-ray straight or tilted towards the left or the right. I is for inspiration. By simply counting the anterior or the posterior ribs, we can determine if the inspiratory effort of the patient is adequate. In general, the inspiratory effort is considered adequate if there are at least 5 to 6 anterior ribs or 8 to 10 posterior ribs above the diaphragm. P refers to picture. This is a quality assurance check, meaning does the chest x-ray adequately cover the entirety of the lung fields? Are the scapulae also covered? And so on. Finally, E refers to exposure or penetration. The exposure or the penetration of the film is adequate if the outlines of the vertebral bodies are also visible. S for soft tissues and bones. Specifically, the bones we see and thus evaluate in a chest x-ray are the ribs, both anterior and posterior, the sternum, the bony spine, and the clavicles. For each, we evaluate for symmetry, for any fractures, dislocations, or any lytic or blastic lesions. For soft tissues, we note the breast shadows for female patients, for any swelling, and for any masses visible in the radiograph. A refers to airway and the mediastinum. Here, we look at the trachea until it moves down to reach the carina before bifurcating into the left and the right mainstem bronchi. We also take note of the aortic knob, also known as the aortic knuckle, and the hilum. B stands for breathing, and this refers to evaluation of the lung fields, and the pleura. The bulk of our evaluation in a chest x-ray is obviously for breathing. In the lung fields, we look at the lung parenchyma or lung tissue itself. Are there any masses, any infiltrates, any cavitary lesions? We also look at the outlines of the lung fields. Is there any atelectasis, meaning lung collapse? Is there any consolidation, which is a typical finding in pneumonia? And for the pleura, we note if there is any suspicious thickening. C stands for circulation, and this is where we look at the heart, its position, its size, its borders, and overall shape. We also note the great vessels, which are the aorta and the superior and inferior vena cava. D is for the diaphragm. Specifically, we look at the left and the right hemidiaphragms, remembering that the right hemidiaphragm is higher than the left by approximately 2.5 centimeters or 1 intercostal space because of the liver underneath. Next, we also evaluate the cardiophrenic and the costophrenic angles, which should be clear and sharp. The cardiophrenic angle is the angle between the heart border and the diaphragm, whereas the costophrenic angle is the angle between the pleura and the diaphragm. More on that in our example later. Finally, E stands for extras or everything else. It is here where we check for any wires and any tubes the patient may have and whether they are placed correctly. Common examples are endotracheal tubes, nasogastric tubes, electrodes of an ECG, chest tubes, metallic implants, and other medical devices such as a pacemaker. And what better way to cement the approach we have just learned by trying it out in an actual example. Suppose we have the following chest x-ray in front of us. Let us apply the doctor's A, B, C, D, E approach to read the x-ray. First of all, after verifying the patient's name, age, date of birth, and sex, together with the date and time the radiograph was taken, we ascertain the projection of the chest x-ray, which for this case is a posterior-anterior or PA view. Next, RIPE, which is our acronym for Assessment of Image Quality. In this radiograph, we appreciate that the film is straight. It's not tilted towards the left or towards the right. Next, we assess the inspiratory effort. We can count either the anterior ribs or the posterior ribs to assess inspiratory effort. Here, we note that there are more or less 7 anterior ribs and around 10 posterior ribs, indicating that inspiratory effort is good. Third, we see that the entirety of both lung fields are very much adequately covered, as well as the scapulae or the shoulder blades, as well as other bony landmarks. Finally, we appreciate that the exposure or the penetration of the film is adequate because the outline of the vertebral bodies are also visible. Next, S, which stands for soft tissues and bones. We see here that there are no signs of fractures, dislocations, or any bony lesions. We also do not see here any signs of swelling or soft tissue masses. Next, we move into evaluating the airway and the mediastinum. In this radiograph, we see that the trachea moves down until it reaches the carina, bifurcating into the left and the right mainstem bronchi. The aortic knob, also known as the aortic knuckle, is also visible, as well as the bilateral hilum. Next is B for breathing. Here, we evaluate the lung fields as well as the pleura. We recall that the right lung has 3 lobes. The right upper, here in red, the right middle in olive green, and the right lower lobe, faintly visible here as magenta. The left lung, on the other hand, only has 2, the left upper and the left lower lobes. The lung lobes are best appreciated if we have, aside from the previous PA projection, a lateral projection as well. In the lateral projection, we can now clearly see the right lower lobe, which is again colored purple here. Above it, the right upper lobe in red, and below it, the right middle lobe in green. This in turn is the left lung. We can see in yellow the left upper lobe, and below it, the left lower lobe in blue. For this particular patient, therefore, we do not appreciate any masses, any infiltrates or lesions in the lung fields. There is also no evidence for any atelectasis, consolidation, or bullae. In addition, the pleura is also not thickened. Next, we go for C, which stands for circulation. Immediately noticeable is the position of the heart, where it is around two-thirds more towards the left and one-third towards the right, which is expected. Off the bat, we also note that the heart is not enlarged, the heart borders are clearly visible, and the great vessels are also appreciable. Second to the last, we have D, which stands for the diaphragm. In our patient, the right lung is indeed higher than the left lung by around 1 intercostal space or 2.5 centimeters. Again, the reason for this is because of the location of the liver in the right hemi-abdomen. Furthermore, we can also appreciate the gastric bubble corresponding to the radiolucent, meaning dark, rounded area under the left hemidiaphragm. Finally, we have E, which stands for extras or everything else. Our patient does not have any visible tubes, wires, electrodes, or implants, as we can see in the radiograph. Hence, our verdict: we have reviewed and thus can sign out this particular chest x-ray as unremarkable. That was a normal chest x-ray, but before we end, let's look at three of the most common chest pathologies that we and you can encounter in the clinic and in the community setting. For our first case, we have the chest x-ray both in PA and lateral projections of a 35-year-old male with a 3-day history of cough and fever. More visible in the PA view, there is increased opacity in the right middle lobe, which we call consolidation. Endobronchial air is also visible against this background of increased opacity, and this radiolucent or dark tracks here are what we call air bronchograms. The presence of air consolidation with air bronchograms in the right middle lobe is compatible with a diagnosis of pneumonia, specifically pneumonia in the right middle lobe. For our second case, we have the PA projection of the chest x-ray of a 20-year-old Filipino lady with a 4-month history of unremitting productive cough with intermittent fever and weight loss. We see here that there are multifocal and patchy opacities in the right upper lobe. The patient underwent gene expert testing, which eventually proved positive for pulmonary tuberculosis. A trademark of pulmonary tuberculosis is that usually the bacilli reside in and therefore usually exhibit some radiologic findings in the apex or in the upper lung lobes. Finally, for our third case, we have a 30-year-old male who presented with acute dyspnea and right-sided chest pain. A chest x-ray PA view was taken, and here we can immediately appreciate the increased right lung field lucency and the absence of pulmonary markings. Lateral to the small hyperdensity over here, which is compatible with the collapsed right lung. The left lung field is otherwise unremarkable. We can also see several circular opacities scattered across the patient's chest, which are likely ECG electrodes. The clinical picture, coupled with the radiographic findings, are compatible with a diagnosis of tension pneumothorax. This is tension pneumothorax.